Hey, this is Dave Miller. Welcome to another episode of Life in Business. Today I've got a new friend, and Mark, he's with us. He's an entrepreneur, father, husband, just had his 5th child last week.
Literally.
That's crazy. We haven't slept in a week.
No.
But he's with us today going to tell us all about his journey and what he's doing. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, if you are watching this episode, please like it, share it, do all that stuff that I don't know anything about to help me get this information out. I think it's a cool thing for business owners around our area and possibly around the nation. Hey, let's jump right in. So Mark, just in talking to you earlier and over the last few weeks or whatever, you've always been an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Kinda.
In some sense,
Yeah.
I mean, from being just 4 or 5 years old, wanting to build things and make things and create stuff that didn't exist. And at some level, I think that's what entrepreneurship is creating things that didn't exist before.
Absolutely. Let's just start. I want to kind of go through some of the different things that you've been involved in, and then get on to what you're doing now, which is super cool. But let's start at the beginning and just tell me about that first business that you had. I think it's super cool. I think you were 14, 15 or something like that?
Yeah, 13.
13, all right, wow.
As if 14 wasn't ridiculous enough. So the story goes, my friends and I had a forum, a private forum. This is like before Facebook and MySpace wasn't really a thing yet. And we had a forum that we built online where all of our friends, there was like 80 of us, we would post and we'd plan parties, or we'd have photo contests, or like we basically had like our own little kind of like social network kind of thing. And my friends and I, like, we all ran together. It was the idea of a friend of mine, and he started a thing, and then we all started working on it, and it was just like this private little social network basically for our friend group. And back then on internet forums, it was like very common to have like a banner designed for your signature. So like after each one of your posts on the forum, it'd have like your little signature banner. And it'd usually have like your username and like a little design or something on it. And my older sister, who was a graphic designer and illustrator and incredible artist, absolutely incredible artist, she put up a thread where she was designing those little banners for like all of our friends on the forum so everyone could have their own little design.
It's incredible.
Super cool, yeah. And so my entrepreneurial start began when I requested that she design one for me. And she told me, yeah, okay, little brother, you can take a hike. I'm not designing anything for you. And I said to myself,
as any living sibling would.
Exactly. And so I said, okay, well, if she's not going to make one for me, then I got to make one myself. So while she was at work, I pirated a copy of Photoshop off of her computer and put it onto my parents' laptop and started messing around with it and started looking on Ask Jeeves for how to do this in Photoshop, how to do that in Photoshop, and like reading these articles and just trying to learn how to work this software program to make designs. And so I made myself a design, and then I was so proud of it that I posted it on the forum, and I made my own thread and said, like, now I'm also making designs for banners. So if you want another one, you can come to me.
That made her really happy.
Very, very happy. So great. And we shared a bathroom, so that was, definitely didn't cause any issues at all in the house. And so I started designing graphics for friends. And it was so much fun, and I started to really enjoy it, that I thought to myself, like, well, I wonder if I could make money doing this. And so then I found another forum that was for like internet marketers and people who were doing things in online business. This is 2006. So like it was like the wild, wild west back then. And I just threw up a thread on there and was like, I'm designing banners. Like if you need graphic designs, and then I could put some examples, whatever. And then I had to convince my mother to sign up for a PayPal account because I was too young to have my own, and she thought putting her social security number on the internet was a scam. And she's like, PayPal, what is that? And I'm like, they're partnered with eBay. It's okay. Trying to convince her that it was safe and all of that stuff.
I was literally to sign up for that back then. So I'm just not in that realm.
Yeah, and we're talking almost 20 years ago at this point. So it was not ubiquitous like it is now.
Yes.
But she did it eventually, and I started making $20 at a time, $30 at a time, $50 at a time, and then one person was like, hey, can you design like a whole web page? And I was like, sure, maybe I could figure that out. So I started doing web design, and then they're like, hey, can you code that page into like actual code from the design so I can like launch it that way? And I was like, I guess I could probably learn how to do that. And so I started to learn HTML and CSS, and so I kind of just like began to develop like marketing skills based on the opportunities that were coming to me, and that sort of began like my more formal like entrepreneurship journey. But I always, from when I was a kid, always loved building things. We used to like design our own board games. We would make comedy skit videos and little movies, like when Captain Underpants, the book, came out.
Yeah.
Like, I loved that book as a kid. And so we made like a little Captain Underpants movie, and of course I starred as Captain Underpants.
There you go.
Running around like 6 years old in my tidy whities with a little cape on, like tra-la-la, you know, and doing the whole thing. So I was always like making videos and movies and media and like creating pretend products, and so I always had that mind. And then in my early teens, I got into, of course, graphics and web and marketing and all those things. And of course, you know, it takes many years, at least it did for me. We'll probably get into it because it's probably a meatier thing to talk about, but like, it took me many years to figure out, and I'm still figuring out, and we all are, how all those seemingly disconnected experiences would like result in a cohesive vision.
Yes.
Right, where like it all makes sense and like comes together, because my life was very tumultuous, and like I was in and out of so many different industries and businesses and different things, and I could never really see how any of that was going to make me happier or give me like the fulfillment or the purpose that I wanted. And it's very hard to figure out how to make business align with like your personal vision for what you want to bring into the world.
Absolutely.
Because oftentimes like those things are opposing. And so we're getting off topic, but that's how I got my start, you know, just kind of falling into it. And then from there, you know, things progressed with different jobs and opportunities and starting my own businesses and, you know, trialing different models, and from being in SaaS companies to like tech startups and service businesses and agencies and local businesses and like all sorts of stuff, and it's slowly but surely brought me to where I am today, which is, you know, an okay place and and a good place to jump off to the next thing.
Yeah, no, if you see my face go blank when you say SaaS or you use initials, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just like, when I do this, I'm like...
Not that it matters, but SaaS is software as a service.
Okay.
So basically a SaaS company is the sort of company where you develop usually like a web application-based software that you sell to users on like a monthly basis. So like if you've used Riverside is a great example of the software that we're recording on right now. Shout out to Riverside.
Come on.
Sponsor these guys' podcast. Riverside is a good example of a software as a service, right? Because they have this web software. They charge you, I think, what, $19 a month. So you pay as a service for software, as opposed to like buying a piece of software and then owning the software and downloading it. Software as a service is typically like web-based software that you pay for every month. So it's just a different model of like how to build a tech company, and that's like one of the spaces that I've been involved in over the years and definitely enjoy. I think it's a great space to be in.
Yeah, that's cool. So those early years, 13, 14, whatever, you were doing digital marketing and making money off of that. I think at 14 or 15 I was probably, I don't know what I was doing. Playing sports.
I was doing a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah. No, actually, because back then, obviously I'm a lot older than you, but...
Don't age yourself, dude. You're not that much older.
When I was 14, though, I mean, it was a normal thing to spend your summer working.
Right.
That's what I did. So, like, I don't understand the, I just wasn't working in something as advanced as you.
Well, I
was picking up garbage.
It's not advanced. It's just it wasn't present. 10 years before that. Or whatever. Like I think about this a lot. When I was growing up and getting into entrepreneurship, it was like the wild, wild west of internet marketing. Like everything was very brand new and like sketchy and weird. But I was part of the, I'm 32, so I was like right on the bubble generationally where like I grew up without a phone, I grew up without the internet, I grew up without like 150 channels on the TV.
Right.
Like I actually scraped my knees and like rode bikes and built ramps and like did stuff in the real world. And so like all of this stuff was like brand new when I was a teenager. And so in the same way that like kids will pick up TikTok super fast because they're like at this age where just the timing is so perfect, I kind of was in that space too where like it was just becoming normal for kids to like, and teenagers to like get online and socialize or do graphics or make music on their computer. Like all these things were like brand new right as I was coming of age. So it obviously like it attracted me because I was like, dude, I can make music on my computer. Like I can record, I can plug a microphone into my computer and like make tracks. Like this is all, everyone does it on their phones now. But back then just doing it at all was like this brand new thing. And so because I was wide-eyed and I was young and very like sponge-like, I was just fortunate to, fall into that space. Although I was also fortunate to not fall into other spaces because a lot of what was happening in the internet marketing world back then was very sketchy, very unregulated. There was a lot of scamming going on with like the info product space and like basically selling information, and there's a lot of people getting sued by attorney generals, and like there's just a lot of craziness.
Yeah.
And I used to like, I'm sure a lot of people watching the show know this person's name, Frank Kern. He's a very well known, kind of like one of the OG internet marketers, and like I was designing graphics for his team. That I found them through that same forum. When I was 14, I was like designing graphics for them. And I had these opportunities to go further into that world and into like the info marketing space. And I could never like pull the trigger on doing it because I felt like I had this like moral struggle because it just felt like it wasn't an ethical way to make money. Yeah. And so that was an interesting part of my journey is like I walked away over the years from a lot of opportunity because like I was uncomfortable doing something that like went against my moral compass.
Yep.
And that like cost me a lot of money and a lot of opportunity and like definitely made my path less clear. But as I'm getting older, like I was saying before, it's one of those things I've realized having a backbone and your moral compass throughout all those disparate experiences, that became the common denominator. Yes. Of my career was my values and my morals, not even the industry or the work that I was doing. It was like the person that I was trying to show up as. And that's been the thing that over the years has actually helped me find clarity about the businesses I want to run and how I want to run them. Because it's my values and my morals, my compass, that drives everything that I do, including deciding to not get into an industry or into business with somebody because of the things attached to it, or deciding, you know what, I am going to go, like, with this media company that I'm working on that we've been talking about and the publication, like, I'm doing that not because it's the easiest business model to make money. I'm doing it because it aligns with my values. And so I went, okay, how do I bring my values into the world? Well, if I was you and I owned a coffee shop, then I would say, well, maybe I can make my coffee shop a community meeting place so that people have a space to meet.
There you go.
And then you did that. Right? Or maybe I should start a podcast so I can start sharing the stories of all the people I'm meeting in my community. And then you did that, right? So it's like these things are happening in your business not because like you chose the model, but because you chose your mission. Yeah. And the mission said, well, when I combine my mission with my resources, what do I actually have and what do I want? Right? Like your buddy who does the lawn mowing content, right? Like he was like, well, what do I want to do? I want to do something that like I can control my time. I want to like be able to help people in the community, right? And be able to like make art. But what do I have? Well, I have a landscaping business.
Yeah. That's a great example.
So how do I turn this like thing I have into like the fuel for my mission? And then for him it was like I should mow lawns for free and film TikToks. And then he turned that whole thing into a profitable enterprise that's actually providing positive impact in the world. And that's what I think that entrepreneurship should be. I think it should be a vehicle to create positive change for the individual who's taking all the risk, but also for the people that they're serving. And that's, if I hadn't gone through all those crazy experiences and tried all these different things, I don't know that I would have come to that conclusion, because I wouldn't have dealt with enough scummy people. I wouldn't have made enough bad decisions in business, from taking investment that I shouldn't have, or going into business with someone that I shouldn't have, or taking on a client that I shouldn't have, or accepting a job that I shouldn't have. But, if I hadn't have done any of those things, I wouldn't have learned the lessons that made me capable to make better decisions now. So it's it's all just part of the journey.
Yeah, it's never, gosh, as I go through life, it's never fun to go through difficulties or to realize that especially when the difficulties caused by you.
In my case, they always are.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh my goodness, but then you remove 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years goes by, and you're like, if I wouldn't have gone through that, even though it was just a really dumb, stupid thing to do, and how would I have ever made such a poor decision? But as we get time to remove from that, we're like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't know what I know now, and sometimes you can help somebody not make the same stupid mistake.
Yeah.
And so I think selfishly, that's why I do this podcast. So just suck information off of people and try to learn from them, and just oh my goodness, if I do this or do that or whatever, and then for my own business, save myself. I think every single time I do one of these, I'm like, I pick up some little nugget or some little bit of information, and I'm thinking, man, how did I not think of that? That seems, some of them seem so obvious, and yet for whatever reason, it somehow eluded me, or whatever.
Well,
does that make sense?
100%. And so there's a. Have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
I think I've read that, or Audible. I think Audible.
Yeah, it's a great book. And in the book, one of the things he talks about is the hive mind, that he calls it. And he references his, I think it's called his council of imaginary something. And basically he has this imaginary group of men that he meets with in his mind when he goes to bed at night. He's got Abraham Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, I think, was on there, and Carnegie and a bunch of other guys, contemporaries and people who were dead. I think he had maybe Napoleon on there. The other Napoleon, and he would have these mental conversations with these ideas in his head of who he thought those people were, and that kind of exposed to him this idea of mixing minds and coming up with things. And so the way I like to think about the hive mind, and why I think conversations like these are so important for everybody, is when you're talking and I'm talking, we're talking together. Our thoughts, not the things we're saying, our thoughts are mixing with what we're saying, what you're saying, and they're mixing all together in the middle, and they're feeding us. It becomes its own mind that feeds us with new information. Here's a perfect example of that, right? I might be telling you something, and you might know something that you haven't told me, and what I'm saying is mixing in your head what you already have in there, and creating new information, new connections, new realizations and epiphanies,
that happens,
right? Downloads.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is, it's not anything that I said to you, or anything that I even knew. It was something that I put out in the middle, mixed with what you put out in the middle, that then fed what you have in your own mind to create a new mind, and that's the hive mind. And so, or the mastermind effect. That's why it's so important to have community with like-minded people. That's why the meetups that you're doing are so important, and some of the advertiser workshops that we're going to do for all of our advertisers with the CDA Giant, having places where business owners can interact with each other, or moms can interact with each other, or programmers can interact with each other, or athletes can interact with each other and mix ideas, right? Mix minds. And form new ideas, get fed from all of the raw material that's coming out of everybody's minds, and feeding the hive. That is one of the most important, for me at least, I've learned it's one of the most important things about being successful as a human, but also as an entrepreneur, is surrounding yourself with people who can feed you and who you can feed in return. And it becomes just this awesome, symbiotic hive mind of people that are all going in the same direction in their own way with their own vision, but are all trying to see the same kinds of things come to life. And so that's why you get so many epiphanies, because it's not you're sitting here asking them questions about your business and they're like consulting you, but yet somehow you're still getting so much real world value. It's because they mixed with you and that formed new ideas that neither of you could have ever come up with on your own.
Yeah, and it's so cool that that can happen with people that are in completely different industries.
Yeah.
You know, like one person makes widgets and one person cleans carpets. And yet, you know, you wouldn't think those are related at all, but man, the same struggles and the same successes, the same experiences, the same whatever happens in both businesses, even though they're not related. That's what's so cool.
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna get comfortable. But the shoes are coming off.
Come on, we're getting busy now.
Yeah,
we're getting
so
ready
like
now.
that, and that to me, that's one of the biggest things I've also learned during my journey, like as a person, is that everything is the same.
Yes.
There's only like a handful of like natural universal laws that exist that are like unchangeable. And then everything else just cascades down from that. And like human nature is human nature, and psychology is psychology. And so business, which is supposed to be the exchange of value between two parties, where there's a problem and then the other party, one party has a problem, the other party has a solution, they exchange value, you know, economic currency or whatever for the value. Like,
Yes.
it's this very basic just transaction. And when you like boil it down to that, and then you layer in just an understanding of how the world works and how people work, it's not that complicated. And it's not that different. Yes, you might have different models and there might be regulatory complications, like that's all noise. But at the core, it's like somebody has a problem, somebody else has a solution. How do you communicate that to them? How do you get enough exposure of that idea to people so that they even are problem aware or solution aware? And how do I make a service that people actually want and that they want again, that they recommend to other people? Like super basic stuff. So like whether you sell widgets or you sell, like you said, carpet cleaning or house cleaning, whatever it was that you said, it's like everybody wants, when they order a widget, they want the email to come right away with their transaction information. They want it to ship quickly. They want to know when it's going to arrive. With a cleaning company, like they want to be able to call you and you actually pick up the phone, or they want a simple form they can fill out where they can redeem an offer. When you're giving them pricing, they want it to make sense and be clear. And when you schedule it to, you know, for them, they don't want to have to wait 2 weeks for you to show up to clean up their house. And when you say you're going to be there at noon on Tuesday, they want you to be there at noon on Tuesday. Like, it's very just basic. It's the same stuff. It translates across whatever industry or a business model, because it's ultimately about solving people's problems and serving people, right? Even if their problem is a luxury thing, like my problem is I don't have enough luxury handbags. Like it's still framed as like, you know, their desire for some of that is the problem. So you speak to their desire for what they want. It's always the same stuff, right? It's always either people are trying to improve their health, they're trying to improve their relationships, or they're trying to improve their finances. It's like people are always trying to do one of those three things.
Seems like it.
And all of that is kind of nestled under the fact that like people are always trying to improve their status, right? They want, whether it's status to themselves, status with their God, status with the community, status with their friends. Like people are pretty much seeking all the same things. And so like business is about serving all the same problems, just in different ways. And that's why I think you probably have so much fun having these conversations, because it's like it's all
Yes.
relevant. You know what I mean?
And it's crazy, but it is the same. Entrepreneurs end up facing a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same struggles or frustrations or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter if they've been in business 30 years or 2 years. It seems like, at least what I'm hearing, some of the same things that are frustrating the person that's been in business 2 years can be the same things that are frustrating the person at 30 years. It's just maybe at a different level. You know, maybe that 30-year person is struggling with, these issues are facing my employees, and now because they're facing my employees, you know, because I care for my employees, I'm trying to help them navigate these things, even though they went through that 30 years ago. It's literally, it's the same. I mean, you worded that so well, because it's a lot. It's weird how much stuff is the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that, to me, speaks to just the fact that, like, for a long time I feel like we tried to make business this thing that was, like, its own entity that's separate from, like, human life. And there's kind of this, like, era where, like, corporatism in business was, like, it was just about, like, statistical numbers and data in a spreadsheet, and the data wasn't representative of, like, the needs and desires of real people. It was just like mathematical and didn't really correlate to people's happiness, and that's how we, in many ways, saw the boom of, you know, corporatism and monopolies and corruption, and that's a whole other conversation for another podcast. That's like more like my podcast, but you know, there's a lot in the underbelly of what made business what it's become. But I feel like we're finally starting to reverse that trend and remember that, like, business is about people, it's about solving problems, it's about creating independence and sovereignty. It's not just about building the biggest, you know, the biggest, a big enough beautiful castle for you in your own, because everybody deserves that, but doing it in a way that it actually empowers other people to have their castles too.
Yes.
Right, instead of trying to just absorb everybody's opportunity and make it your own. Create opportunity for yourself while creating opportunity for other people. And that's like what I think about and what I look at when I'm, like, thinking about if there's a business I want to be involved in. Like when I started Ancient Strength, my supplement brand, it was like I wanted to do it because in my head, by creating products that were legitimately better than everybody else's, I could empower people to be healthier and to be stronger and to make more progress with their healing journey and with their gut health and all these things. And it was like, cool, that makes me money, gives me opportunity to work on something fun and cool and exciting and build things. It's solving a problem that's in the market, and that solution is going to empower people to become freer, to become more awake, to become more consciously aware, to become more sovereign, right? To become more enlightened with their own vision for their life and fired up and able to actually execute on that. And obviously, like, giving them really high quality healthy protein powder is like one small piece of that. But if like as entrepreneurs, if we all take responsibility for different problems that we see in the community and in the world and in the marketplace, and then we solve them in a way that empowers people while profiting at the same time, because there's nothing wrong with profit, then I think that we could make entrepreneurship the force for good. Where the governments have failed us, we can pick up the slack by creating enough abundance that we can solve the problems ourselves. And that's the future that I believe in, is, you know, small government stays out of the way, fosters innovation and freedom, and that there's a renaissance of entrepreneurship and small business ownership. That's what I personally want to see happen, is more people own their own business, more people own their own freedom. And then those businesses serve as a vehicle for employees to grow up into, through, and out of, right? Mm-hmm. And designed to be almost like a launching pad for people to become independent. Because I don't think that we can be happy as a society if there are more people who are employees than people who are independently, either independently contracted or that are, you know, independent entrepreneurs, business owners of some kind. And now that we have so many advances in robotics and AI, like I've been building AI tools for clients and for my own projects and businesses lately, and we've been playing with, like, some no-code tools that allow you to, like, prompt AI to have it build applications on your behalf. And then with just some coding, you can customize the coding, you can go deeper as a programmer, you can get more out of it. But, like, the ability to create AI-driven tools that make businesses run more efficiently, which is what I spent a lot of my career doing, was being COO and operating businesses and trying to improve, like, operational efficiency, profitability, reduce management headaches, those sorts of things. Like, the tools that are available now to build those things, you can build multi-million-dollar companies as a solo founder, where there's literally 0 employees except for yourself, you know, and maybe a handful of contractors and some AI agents and some automations and some tools. And so we can't run away from technology and pretend like it's not going to keep progressing. Instead, I think we need to get ahead of it and commandeer it for the purposes of making people more free, not for the purposes of putting all the power in the hands of the corporations who would run the AIs, and then you have to live off of universal basic income. Right, that's not the future that I want to see. I want to see the citizenry, the sovereign humans of this land become empowered to build for themselves their own emerald cities, right? And how those emerald cities interact with each other through the community. Really like a return to the independent nuclear family, if you will. But you can think of that like the entrepreneur as like the head of their little entrepreneurial family, right? And I think that that's a future-proof way to evolve business without relying on massive corporate interest, and their money, which I think is, a house of cards that's on its way down anyway.
Yeah, it's so crazy because I'm listening to you talk about AI and robotics and being able to have AI write code and all that stuff, but at the core, the stuff you're talking about is the values we had 200 years ago.
100%.
That's how, when I think of how America was founded, that's what I want to think about. I think about people, men and women, where the family unit was the strongest unit in the world, and it was the unit that, the guy wanted to protect and serve his family, and, his wife wanted to do the same thing. Entrepreneurship was a way that they could stay free to do that, and people would exchange like, hey, this particular city has a farmer and probably everybody had some type of farming, but maybe they raised cows. This person was a blacksmith. This person was a butcher. This person, and I could see in my mind, and maybe this is Pollyanna, but I see those people just trading services and goods, and all of a sudden, when I'm
independent of oversight.
Yes. I don't. If you have something that I need, and I have something that you need, and we work out a trade to figure out how we can meet each other's needs, we don't need a third party to get involved.
Correct.
To tell us if that's appropriate or not. Oh, right. No, I could go off.
I know you can, and I can too. And so, like for me, the way I like to think about it is like, so I'm very politically minded, and I have a lot of opinions, and some of my opinions would be considered left, a lot of my opinions would be considered right, a lot of my opinions would be considered centrist. Like, I try not to, like, just play bylines and like, this is my party, and so I agree with all these things, or what have you. But one of the conversations that I see having, and this contributes to one of my goals, which is to create more unity in the world, is we have to obviously heal the divide between the left and the right, let's call it, or progressives and conservatives. And one of the things that I think is important about this conversation about where business should go and the government and all those things is you have a group of people who are, for the most part, very, very forward-looking to the default, to where they want to tear down every institution because it's not brand new. And so just because it's existed for a long time, it's inherently bad and must be torn down. And these are the same people that are typically pushing for AI, and universal basic income, and a nanny state government, a gigantic welfare state, like, all of these things, because they think that it's going to be some perfect utopia, but it always comes at a price. That price is your freedom. And so, but you have these people that are very much like that. Naturally, because you have such a polarized opinion over here, the opposite polarized opinion forms. You have people all the way on the other side that are like, they're going to take our guns, I'm going to go out in the woods, and I'm going to live off grid and boil my own water. And it's like, okay, like, you could do that, and that's fine. But if you really want to do that, that's okay. But are you doing that because you want to, or are you doing that because you're afraid of the machine? Right? And is that really the way that you want to live your life? Do you want to be living in fear? And it's also like, and I know some people listening to this podcast probably aren't going to like me saying this, but like, that, like, there are old school ideas that need to die. Yeah. Not everything should be ripped away, and not everything should still be with us. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The truth is in between. And so bringing that to the conversation about like AI and all those things, like, you're 100% right that I want to return to an older version of America where the government leaves us alone, where we're trading freely, where most people are independently contracted, right? Like you were saying, hundreds of years ago, it's just like, all right, what am I gonna like make to put
Right.
food on the table.
What's my contribution?
Maybe I'll like make pottery, and then I'll sell those pots at the market. Everyone was an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I think that we need to return to that. Not necessarily everyone, but much higher percentage of people.
Right.
And the people who are employees should be told, like, the job is for you to, your role is to someday become independent, to become an independent person. But this job is going to help you become independent, right? I think that's the path that it should be for most people. Yes, there will always be people that would rather be led, would rather have a job, and that's fine. But we don't have an incentive system where that's a choice for most people. It's the only reality for most people. And so again, going back to the AI thing, the problem that I see is that there's too many people who are so afraid of the progressive left or afraid of technology and all these things that they refuse to evolve. And they refuse to consider that maybe there are skills that they need to learn. Maybe they need to go take a class to learn something. Like I had somebody tell me once, an older gentleman, that he couldn't start a business because he can start another business in this age because he wasn't tech savvy and he'd never make it. And I said, learn how to use a freaking computer. And he goes, it's too complicated, I could never figure it out. And I went, dude, you could literally buy a $1,000 MacBook Air. He had plenty of money. You could buy a $1,000 MacBook Air. They have classes at the Apple Store, free, every day on different topics. And you can go in and you can take courses on how to use your freaking computer. How to operate an email, how to write a document, how to sign up for Google Docs. Like, anyone can learn anything. Yes, maybe if you're way older, it might take you a little bit longer and there might be more unfamiliar things, but it's like, where there's a will, there's a way. And people who don't learn how to use technology are going to be eaten alive by people who do. And so, like, we have to combine ideas. We have to go, well, what does the left have right? Or what is, not necessarily the left, but what is, what do the technocrats have right? It's like, well, we should have AI and robots doing a lot of things for us. But we don't want to lose our factory jobs. It's like, but do you really want to work in a factory? Probably not.
Right.
You just don't believe that there's something greater for you. But what if we could have 100 different auto manufacturers run by different people who used to work at the factories, right? And they're designing different cars for different needs. And why hasn't somebody designed a two-row SUV that can fit my family of 7? I'm looking. That's what I want. That's a niche market. But there are people who will buy that. Ford can't afford to make a car like that. But if you had a freaking car company that costs $100,000 to start because you just need a 3D printing box machine and an AI and a couple of people to run the team, cool, now anybody can start a car company. It's not only up to the multi-billionaires or the big money interests. So it's like you can use technology and you can use things that are going to take away jobs to your advantage because you can evolve as a person. And I think that that's what we need to do. I think that's what's going to happen. And people are either going to rest on their laurels for a really long time and then maybe get lucky and they die before it all transfers over, or somebody comes and buys them out and then they ride off into the sunset, or they figure it out and they dig their heels in and they go, okay, I still have half of my career left. I'm not going to get left behind by not learning how to adapt, right? Not using this, oh, I'm a Gen Xer, I don't use the computer, as an excuse to hold me back. Because if you do, then what's going to happen is the people who know how to use the technology are going to take advantage of you.
Yep. Yeah, that's totally true.
And they're going to sell you things that you don't need for a price that you shouldn't pay, all because they get to hide behind the mysticism and the smoke and mirrors of technology that you don't understand. Right? Which is another thing that I've learned about business, that I've made this mistake 1,000 times, but like, you should never outsource or hire out a function in the job that you have no idea how it works, especially when you're small, right? Like, learn the process, get the basics down, at least to the degree where you can suss out if somebody is going to scam you. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't do that either as entrepreneurs, especially when it relates to things like technology. And it, I think, behooves entrepreneurs, business owners, especially in the local space, which is the space that I'm focusing on now. Like, local business owners need to be on the cutting edge of what's happening, because it only takes 1 or 2 competitors in a space to adopt a new technology to wipe out everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't take much.
Totally.
You know, like, don't you think that the first small town coffee shop that came out with a really good rewards program, don't you think that they cleaned house?
Yeah, yeah.
And aren't you seeing here in town a number of independently owned coffee shops, as an example, being purchased by larger brands that are expanding?
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely
Why
happening.
is that happening?
Yeah.
Because they had better branding, because they studied marketing and psychology. They had a better website, so people had a better user experience. They invested in real marketing, so it was easy to find them, and all the information was freely available. They launched good rewards programs that were easy for people to use and redeem, so people started to enjoy the process of going to that business. They implemented better staffing and customer service training processes, so they treat you nicer and more friendly at the coffee shop. They did the work of learning how to adapt and grow and become better, and a lot of that has to do with using technology. Now it's things like, are you thinking about an AI chatbot, right? Or are you building marketing automations on the back end of your business? Are you tracking all of your advertising so you actually know where the money's coming from the money that you're spending? Like, if you're not doing those things, like, it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
It's been 15 years since these tools started to become available. Like, when I was first getting into local marketing in 2010, 2011, like, a lot of these tools were brand new. Like, when I was first telling people about reputation management services and having a review management portal for their business to capture reviews and field bad ones before they hit the public networks, nobody had ever heard of that. It was brand new stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's like, if you're not doing review management, like, you're leaving a lot of money on the table because everybody who's smart is doing it. And so, like, we're at the point where, like, as entrepreneurs, we can't ignore technology. And I had the privilege of being able to play in the local space for a long time and in the tech space for a long time. So, like, I see what all those people are doing wrong. The tech people don't care enough about human-to-human connection. They don't care enough about community. They don't care enough about impact. They just care about eating up the world. But they're really good at technology and AI and marketing, and they really know how to finesse the system to make things work in their favor. Because you have to if you want to be a billion-dollar company. You can kind of mosey around and make $100K a year. You can't mosey around and make $1 billion a year, right? Like, you gotta actually have some sophistication to get to that level. And then local business owners, on the other hand, like, I love these people. You know, they are the bedrock of the community. They make the community, like, you have a freaking Dole Whip machine at your coffee shop.
Come on.
Like, I remember growing up, the only place that you could get a Dole Whip was one location in Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World Resort. And I lived in Florida. We used to go to Disney often when I was a kid. That was like the one place where we would vacation. That's where I got my cartoons and movies inspirations and wanting to make theme parks and all that stuff. And, like, I would just look forward so much to, like, going to get a Dole Whip. McDonald's isn't going to put a Dole Whip machine in, right? Corporate companies are not going to, you know, throw this wild card out and bring this thing to the community. It's going to take a crazy person like you, right? Like,
Come on.
It's going to take some guy who had an idea, who went and did it. Like, that's what's going to take to bring, like, real community engagement and real innovation, and not just entrenching corporate interests, like enriching the old guard. Those two things are always going to be opposing ideas. And I think that, like, we need entrepreneurs to carry the community, to host events. That's another way you're carrying the community on your backs. Like, you have this location to have all these amazing events that people can have, oftentimes for free. And it's like, well, shucks. Imagine if you didn't become an entrepreneur. Imagine if you didn't start that coffee shop. Like, that resource wouldn't exist for those people. And so, like, entrepreneurs need to survive. And they need to thrive. They need to grow. They need to become more abundant. They need to have more resources than they have. Because with those resources, they can make the world better. And I just think that the money has been in the hands of the wrong people. I don't think it's the money that's the problem. I think it's the people who control the money that are the problem. Like, I'm not one of those people that believes that, like, you know, money corrupts you or that money makes you bad. Like, money just exposes you.
100%.
It reveals who you already are. You're just going to be more of who you are with money.
Right.
And so if you are a good person and you do have a caring, giving heart, the business is going to, and money is going to just give you more resources to bring that into the world. And people who don't believe that, those are the people that have been brainwashed by the system, and the system wants them to think that, because then they never think about becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner themselves, or becoming wealthy.
Right.
because they see it as a bad thing, or that's something that other people do, that those are selfish people and blah blah blah. Oh, people, entrepreneurs, they walk all over people, they scam people, they treat everybody poorly, like, I'm a good person because I'm middle management and make $40K a year and hate my life. Like,
Right.
no, you're not. One has nothing to do with the other. Anyway.
I mean, obviously, especially if it gets into all of these social issues, political issues, and I mean, we've already had long talks about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I really want to get into. I wanted to get into a lot of the business that you've done because they're so fascinating. But I really want to spend some time on what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Because it's so cool.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, I want people to hear about it, but I think it's inspiring because I think there's that those people that are listening and maybe they're not getting into the same thing that you're getting into, but they've got an idea and they're thinking, well, I mean, maybe it's too saturated, maybe the competition is too heavy, or maybe there's not, whatever it is. It's all the things come against them, and then they end up not doing it. So even the people that are watching, or listening, or whatever, they might not be doing the same thing. I mean, listening to your ideas, they were inspiring to me. And so would you mind just spending a little bit of time talking about what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick before I share that, on the note of not starting ideas, I spent most of my life not starting most of my ideas because I was afraid to, because I didn't want to fail.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've learned is that, they say that most entrepreneurs that I know that are not successful, or that are struggling, or that have struggled, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I myself have struggled deeply as well, they struggle mostly because they're too smart. Like, they're actually just too smart for their own good. And something that happens with people who are smart is that they overthink. They think and they think and they think and think and think. They either think too much, too fast, or both. And about too many things. And they're always considering every possible outcome. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out 2. It just came out on streaming.
My kids, I have not seen it.
We just watched it with my son last night, and there's one of the new emotions is anxiety. And in the movie, I won't spoil it, but like anxiety ends up like taking over at some point, and like it's like all anxious thoughts. And I was laughing watching the movie because I was like, this is what being an entrepreneur is like. It's just constant anxiety, just constant rampage of all these recurring obsessive thoughts ruminant thoughts that you can't get rid of, oh my God, am I going to fail? I'm not enough. This is not good enough. Like, everyone's going to hate me. No one's going to buy my stuff. Like, what if it doesn't work? Like, all of these questions, right? It's like we spend most of our time doing that, and that's actually what makes us unsuccessful, is because we are too smart for our own good. And so a lot of the people that I know that are super ultra successful are not actually that intelligent or that gifted or brilliant.
I've seen that so many times. I'm like,
to their credit.
Yes.
And the reason is because they're just too delusional to question themselves. They have so much bravado and like machismo about them that they're just like, this is gonna work, and then they never have another voice in it. It's like, no, it's not. Right? Whereas the rest of us are like, this is going to work. No, it's not. This is going to work. Yeah, right, it's not going to work. But some people just don't have that voice. And by golly, like, bless their hearts, like, I wish that was me. Like,
yes.
I spent most of my career fighting my inner self-hatred and self-disbelief and self-doubt that I could actually do something. And that's why it took me so many years to get back to a place where I'm finally working on things that really, really matter to me. It's because I didn't believe in myself, or I believed, like you said, that it's too saturated, I'll never make it in that space, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So for me, what I'm working on now, when I was a kid, I told you, we used to make movies and comedies and skits, and we used to do prank videos and fake news broadcasts, like 25 years ago, we used to like do this stuff. We had a company that my sister and I came up with called CRAP, an acronym, Creating Really Awesome Products.
Come on, there you go, dude. I love it.
And we would do like spoof infomercials for like products that we created. One time we took like an old medicine bottle and we put a label on it for a medicine called crap, and then we just put a bunch of sweet tarts in the bottle, and like I come down the stairs with a little blanket and my jammies on, and I'm like, when I wake up in the morning I'm all tired and weak, and I like rub my eyes and I walk over to the kitchen and I go up to the cabinet and I pull this thing out and I go, that's why I take crap. it's a mix of caffeine, rum, asparagus, and protein, like a CRAP. And then I open the bottle and I just pour them all in my face. And I start chewing them up, and then like my eyes get real big, and I grab the camera and I scream at it, and like I start running around in circles. I pick up a fake tree that we had that looked like it was really heavy, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like I pick it up and like I throw it, and then I run out in the backyard and I'm running around in circles. And my brother-in-law, who's much older, he's sitting at the patio table with a newspaper. He closes the newspaper and he look like the camera pans to him. He closes the newspaper. He looks at the camera and he goes, "Man, that crap really does."
That's awesome.
So like. We were just making, silly. I was making lightsaber effect videos and videos of me flying out of my roof. And like when I was a kid, I was always into like making media, and I never thought that it was a potential career path to get into media for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which, I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not one any longer, but I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and part of my worldview at the time was that to participate in the world's affairs was discouraged. It was greatly discouraged within the church. Going to college was discouraged, and less now, but back then more so. And making money, like people who made a lot of money were usually looked down upon, or people would kind of talk crap about them behind their backs. They were the subject of a lot of gossip. If you were in the congregation, you had some money. And combine that with the fact that I was told growing up that the whole media industry is run by Satan, and that it's all evil and bad, and you don't want to be involved in that industry anyways. Ironically, I came to find out 30 years later that that's actually true.
Oh, dude.
That's actually true.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I was like, it's bad, it's for other people, that's for people, that's for worldly people as we called it, that's not for me, and I never ever considered it seriously. And growing up, I loved the Disney company. I loved old classic Disney movies. I loved animated films like The Iron Giant, which is one of the last hand-drawn animated films, not made by Disney, but similar style. I was obsessed with Disney World and the theme parks and just the immersiveness. I just loved this whole world of telling stories with film and media and content and plushies and books and all these amazing video games, whatever, all of it. Building stories and then telling stories in different mediums. With this format, right? Loved all of that stuff. And I've been always a musician, been writing and recording since I was 13. Always loved art, all those things. Never considered it as a real career path. And so I never pursued any of those things. I had one of the first viral roller coaster tycoon videos on YouTube, and still never had an inkling of, should I make media or make this world my career? And of course, I got into graphics, which is still artistic. That took me into web design, a little bit less artistic. Yeah. Into marketing, a little bit less artistic. Into sales, way less artistic, but still some art. And then business and operations. And so you see it kind of fell off this path. And I'm sharing all that context because I think, you were asking about making the decision to take risks and do things that people think are crazy or that are too big or would never work or whatever. And for me, knowing the whole story is important because it's what got me to where I am today, to where I have the confidence to do what I'm trying to do. And so I lost my way for 15 years, and I just became a business guy, a startup guy, a consultant, building sales teams, marketing teams, and ops teams, and doing all those things. And it was fun, it was great, and I loved it to a degree, but I would always burn out. Every couple of years, I would have to leave the company that I was at because I would just get burnt out. And I'd be like, I'm done with this. And it was because I wasn't really truly aligned. And in 2016, when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, my wife and I bought an RV. We went traveling full-time for a year, and I started to really explore myself as a person and think about who I wanted to be and who I was outside of this framework, which was nobody. I didn't exist. Everything I was inside the bubble, right? And so I had to rebuild my character from nothing. And over the course of a couple of years, I started to just get these inklings that maybe you could make cartoons, maybe you could make music, maybe you could make movies, maybe you could start a news station, maybe you could start a newspaper, maybe these things are possible. And then I remember in 2019 I got to hang out for a while with Gary Vaynerchuk. A friend of mine had won a charity auction and knew Gary and was going to visit him and had 3 hours alone with him in his office, and he could bring 2 guests, and he brought me with him. And so we got to spend 3 hours just hanging out with Gary Vee. There's even an episode of his vlog that I'm in, and I'm on his in his audio podcast, Our Conversation. And I had a really enlightening conversation with him because he wants to buy the Jets and wants to do all these like really big things. And I was like, I want to buy the Miami Marlins someday and rename them the Florida Marlins and win a world championship with them. And like, I just don't know if it's like possible. And he basically like made me believe that it was possible. And then that was the day, it was 2019. That was like the moment where I realized I could probably do whatever I want if I really set my mind to it. And I build a long-term vision and I go, okay, it's going to take me 30 years from today to open my first theme park. Where do I, filled with the IP that me and my friends develop, like where do I start? And a big piece of it was starting by dismantling the career that I had built. So slowly but surely moving away from the space that I was in and then creating space for me to move into the world that I really wanted to be in. And that's been like a 5-year journey to get to where I am today, which is a really, really exciting, really exciting place because I'm finally moving forward in all these streams. And so I've gone completely full circle. And throughout my life, I've developed this set of like morals and values and opinions about the world, as well as what I think my mission is. I think we all share a very similar mission. And for me, I want to elevate human consciousness. I want to help the average human being to operate at a mental level above where they are that affords them more emotional, mental, physical, financial, and spiritual freedom, right? I want people to become sovereign. I want to help people be sovereign. And I believe that my calling is to do that through media. And over the last 6 years, as I've gone way down the rabbit hole of conspiracies and what's happening in the world, and I see now the media apparatus for what it is, which is a programming apparatus for the interests of the few, that was the thing that made me go, oh my gosh, not only will God let me make cartoons, God needs me to make cartoons because those cartoons are going to change the culture away from this programming. And so my goal is to build a Emerald City of my own, a media business that touches fiction and nonfiction media in every format and medium possible, that is designed to inform, educate, and purely entertain humanity in a way that empowers them to become freer, to become more sovereign, to become more educated, to become more self-reliant. And I think that's the opposite of what the media does today, both the news media and Hollywood, as well as the music industry and all the pieces that collect together between them. Right. They're doing the opposite of that. And I'm coming in saying, from the grassroots up, I want to replace that architecture with something better. And I know I can't do it alone, and I know that I won't be the only one that's building that, but I want to play my role in being one of the companies, one of the people, one of the faces of changing the conversation around news media, which is completely off the rails, reporting, local publications, etc., other formats of media, movies, TV shows, books, novels, comics, all those sorts of things. And so where I'm starting is right here. So I'm launching, October 15th is when we launched the publication. I'm launching a publication here in CDA called the CDA Giant. And we are a local news publication. We're going to have local spotlights and features, interviews with notable people who are here locally. We're going to have business directories. We're going to have health and wellness content. We're going to be reporting on local news. We're going to be reporting out. We're going to have a local events calendar available on there, where people can find, events and meetups and groups and things here locally in town. We're going to have business content, political reporting from a national level, health and wellness content. We are also launching something called the Giant TV Network, which is going to be a network of syndicated, for now, talk show hosts based similar to like this podcast. My podcast is going on the network. We have some other conversations in the works with other shows that may join the network. And so we're launching Giant TV, which is going to run alongside the publication and serve as a place for people to learn, educate, become inspired with video content that is designed to give them more opportunity to become unified as a culture and sovereign as individuals, because that's our thing with CDA Giant and with the Giant in general, Giant Media Network, which is the whole kind of conglomerate. is I want to stand for unity. I want to heal the divide between the warring factions in our country, and balanced media, movies that everybody can enjoy that still have values that teach us lessons, news reporting that leaves out the throwing of rocks for the sake of throwing of rocks, and just reports on things that are happening and helps the community move forward, or community reporting that doesn't just enrich the few who are in the old guard, but that empowers the average business owner to be exposed to more people, or the average citizen to get recognition for a job well done, all of those things. And then from there, we're going to begin expanding the publication outside of, or the company outside of the publication, to other formats of media, cartoons, shorts, eventually, broader types of content, movies, etc. We're launching a section on the site called Kid Town, where we're going to be syndicating some locally authored children's stories that will be available as shorts on the platform as well. We're working on some games, interactive educational games that kids will be able to play on Kid Town within the publication itself. And so we're trying to create a real hub, a place where the community can learn, grow, connect, educate themselves, become inspired, entertain themselves, have a laugh. We're going to be doing man on the street content. We're going to be doing a lot of guerrilla marketing downtown, and handing out cards and talking to people locally and doing interviews, and just really being super entrenched in the community. So like by the community, for the community. That's going to create the groundswell to help grow the business to the point where we can start to afford to produce our own media without having to take outside investment from special interest money who will want our cartoons to have some sort of agenda, or to serve a specific audience. Instead, we get to decide what we create, why we create it, how we're creating it. And one of the things I'm super excited about that we're launching with the CDHI is something called the CDHI card, which I obviously showed you, and it's a 9 by 12 inch mailer that we are coalescing with other local businesses to collaborate on, so we can reduce the cost of reaching over 10,000 residents directly in their mailbox by banding together and being able to promote collaborative, non-competitive businesses on the same card. And we're parlaying that into an ability to promote the publication, because on every one of those cards that people will be getting in the mail, there's going to be an excerpt from a featured article on the publication, and there's also going to be a comic. So I showed you, we're working on a comic strip series, and so we've got comics that are going to have social commentary, political commentary, that are really going to be thoughtful and funny, but also really get people to see the world for what it is and help them make decisions of how to make their world better. And so it's not just a news publication, it's not just an advertising opportunity, it's a community focused effort that will empower us to take control of the way that we grow our businesses and the way that we grow our community, and the conversation that we have in the community about what needs to change, what's going well, what's not going so well, etc., etc., etc. And by combining it all into this card, it allows us to get our publication in the hands of people, our comics in the hands of people, as well as amazing offers with the best local businesses, with our favorite local businesses, all in one place. And then we get to scratch each other's backs. And these are the sorts of ideas that I'm most bullish on, because they are symbiotic.
Right.
They help everybody.
Yep.
And they don't just enrich the few, because we're not going to get out of this mess if we keep doing that. And so that's what we're working on. I'm really, really excited about this, because again, perfect example with the How We Do It comic strips. We're going to take those and turn those into some short cartoons, 15, 30-second cartoons. And then as we publish those, and those start to get traction, both locally and nationally, we make more comics, and that grows the readership, and then the readership grows the comic, and then the comic grows the readership, and it feels itself. It doesn't become that hard to then say, hey, let's set some money aside to go film a 12-minute pilot episode of this cartoon with a little bit higher production value. And then we can go and we can do that. And then we can tap into the influencers that we know, the people in the media that we're connected to, our own media outlet, and we can bring those things to the world and have an opportunity to make better shows that don't indoctrinate our kids, or that don't indoctrinate us. It's like, I used to love watching The Simpsons and Futurama and home movies and all these shows, and some of them it's hard to even go back and watch now because I can see the programming.
I know, that's
and I didn't used to be able to see it, and like now I see it and I'm like, this show is ruined, this show is ruined. We're flipping through Disney Plus and I'm like, that guy's a pedophile, this show is ruined. It's like, you know.
It's so frustrating.
And so I'm using my skills and my desire to grow the community as a way to create a foundation that will hopefully allow me to change the media game over time by bringing better options in a way that I'm in control of it, or we're in control of it, my team, right? Where the company and our interests and our community's interests can decide what we do and what we put into the cartoons and why we're doing it, and rather than people who have an agenda that they want to shove down your throat, right? Like I want kids movies that are about bravery and courage and doing the right thing and making friends and standing up for what you believe in and not being afraid. And we don't need to bake left or right-wing ideology into the movies to do that. And
values are values.
Values are values, right. And whatever religious or spiritual path that you take as you develop values, that's your business. But I do think we have a responsibility to program our society with better values. If I have an agenda, it's that. That's my agenda. Is unity and values.
Right.
Like actually virtue. Unity and virtue, to me, are like the two most important things that you want in a society.
Right.
Unity and virtue. Because if you have both of those things, you're going to be okay.
Right.
And I think that we're doing a bad job of educating and entertaining people towards that. Like, you know, you get the classic deadbeat dad character in every TV show. You know, even with Inside Out 2, we were watching it yesterday, and like there's a scene where they're driving their daughter to like a hockey camp for the weekend, and it shows like the mom and dad in the front seat. And dad says to mom, he's like, hey, you know, like, we're going to have the house to ourselves this weekend, you know, so maybe we could, you know, hang out. And like, the camera's like zooming slowly past them while he's saying this. And he goes like this, and he's like, he bites his lip and like makes kind of like, you know, with his eyebrows, he wants to, you know, do adult things with his adult wife, right? And then his wife goes, she's like, look, she's driving and she's looking ahead. And she goes, yeah, you know, I was thinking like we could maybe clean out the garage and like the back deck could use like a scrape. Like she starts like listing off like all these chores, and then it shows him like as it's moving to the other scene, it shows him and he just goes, ugh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there it is, right there, and my wife noticed it too, right? And my son who's 6 watching the movie with us, he doesn't consciously notice it, but his subconscious is being fed that.
Right.
And what is it being fed? Mom doesn't want to have sex with dad. Mom and dad don't have a loving, close relationship where they're fulfilled. Dad's kind of a loser that mom doesn't really want. If he was a movie star, she'd be all over him, but he's not, so she doesn't want him. Right? Dad wants to be intimate with mom, but mom's going to reject him. Right? Mom and dad are not on the same page.
Right.
Dad's just a loser who just wants to get laid. Right? Like all of these, you didn't have to say anything, but just putting that little interaction in there and making it that instead of something else is enough to program people little by little that's how it is. That's how it's supposed to be. That's what reality is. Homer Simpson, the deadbeat dad. Peter Griffin, deadbeat dad. Right? Like
who's Peter Griffin?
From Family Guy. You know, deadbeat dad. Yeah. King of Queens. You know, Kevin James character, just total like goofball. Wife runs the show. Right? And it's like, why? Why is it like that? Why?
See, I'm way older. Family Ties.
Yeah, but see,
same thing.
Totally. It's totally different when you go far enough back. Like, you know, one of the shows I love is like Leave It to Beaver, right? And you look at like the parents in that show, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to live by like super traditional gender roles, and people like they want to go up in arms and say like, oh, you're a bigot, you're this. It's like, no, you're not understanding. What I'm saying is, if we could choose, and we can, to portray whatever we want in the media that we produce. Right. Why would we choose to portray a mom and a dad who don't really like each other, who nag each other all the time, wife never wants to sleep with the husband? Like, why is that a recurring thing in every freaking sitcom? Wives don't want to sleep with their husbands. Why is that? Is it because husbands are truly losers and wives don't want them? Or have they become that way because we've been culturally to become that way? Because why would we do that if we have a choice instead of, with the Cleavers, right? Like, was Dad Roy? Was his name? His dad? I don't remember. But Mom and Dad, they respected each other. Mom loved the children and nurtured them. Dad was a disciplinary, but he was firm, but he was kind, and he was balanced, and he worked hard for his family, and he was respected in the community. Why the hell is that a bad thing for us to portray? Unless you want to break down the nuclear family because you want chaos, because you want people to be oppressed, which I won't say whether it is or it isn't that way. All I can say is that I want to write news. I want a news publication here in town that is not ideological and that is not partisan and that does not snub stories that should be told and tell stories that should be snubbed. And I want to do the same thing for advertising and marketing products for local businesses because I think they deserve better, and that's a vehicle that we're going to use to help them grow. And I think that children deserve better with better cartoons and characters and heroes that they should be looking at. And I think that adults deserve better. I think we deserve better adult cartoons for us to sit down with our wives and watch something that makes us laugh, right? But that doesn't program us to hate our lives or hate the world or hate ourselves or our spouses or question everything about ourselves, but instead actually makes us a better person instead of a worse person, right? Those are the problems that I want to solve, and I think media is, in general, the most powerful way to solve those problems because you can reach so many people and you can create so much change. And all the people who have all the power, what do they use to create change? Media. Those are the keys to the kingdom right there. We just need to actually band together and do it. And I cannot do it alone, and I don't anticipate to come up with every character or run every studio or do all those things, but what I do anticipate to do is be the guy who can champion the vision that other artists have and help them bring those visions to life by us banding our resources together and doing more together than we ever could alone, while at the same time protecting independence from special interests and artistic independence as it relates to the media that people want to individually create and all that stuff. So yeah, that is a mouthful, but this is the project that will lead into me being able to do themed hotels, resorts, and we want to expand Cape Town into an indoor theme park, and then eventually build a magnum opus resort that's got theme park and resort. I want to get there in 30 years, be breaking ground by the time I'm 62 years old and that, and then maybe my kids can, or my grandkids or whoever comes after me can be the champion of it. That'd be amazing. If I could live to opening day at my theme park, that'd be amazing. If I could just get to there. And in the meantime, it's all about building a media company that does right by its readers, it does right by its advertisers, does right by all of the consumers at every level, whatever kind of media that we're creating, and helps people become more of who I think that they are designed to be, which is, free and healthy and exceptional and creative and full of love. I think that's our natural state. I think that's what we're supposed to feel. I think that's how we're supposed to behave. And I think that's how the world should operate. And I think that we can use media to help us get there faster.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I don't think that kindness and being loving, being bravery, being honest, those shouldn't be politicized. Right is right. Be honest. That's not that shouldn't be a foreign concept.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be teaching our next generation how to skirt the system. Just help them be honest and productive and loving and kind and generous. It's crazy, man. So how would people find out more about, because we could talk for 5 more hours or longer.
I know I can.
How could people learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so if they want to check out what we're working on with the Giant, best way to do that would just be to go to cdagiant.com and sign up for it, depending on when this episode drops. If it's before the 15th of October, sign up with email to get notified when we drop, when the publication launches. Or if it's post that, then cdagiant.com to check out the publication. We're going to be there's going to be news content every day, and new articles, new videos, new shows coming out. So there's going to be a lot of amazing stuff that's going on there. And if somebody runs a local business here in the Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden area, and they are looking for additional exposure for their business, we are launching advertising programs like our CDA Giant card, and they can go to cdagiantcard.com to learn more and fill out a form to get some more information about being on the card. Or of course, you know, if it's somebody who knows you, you can always give them my number and they can shoot me a text and we can grab a coffee down at Life and, you know, talk about how we might be able to collaborate.
As I advertise this and all that, we'll put those websites on everything that we can do. And then I'll lean on your expertise for me as to, like, hey, how do I do this or whatever? And, and you can tell me, because I'm really learning this stuff, man.
Maybe Life in Business will be syndicated on the Giant TV network.
Come on. Man, honestly, it was a pleasure. I had a blast just talking with you, hearing your heart and hearing your passion. And, man, it was a lot of fun. I don't know really what I'm doing, but I'm sure having fun doing it.
I think that's the most important thing, you know, especially with a podcast. Like, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. And that, for me, is something that it took me a very long time to learn. And now, you know, I'm 32, and I'm just now starting to work on the project that's, like, really, 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 really lighting up my soul. And I had to work on those other things to see and to clarify the vision. Like, I wouldn't know so much about how to help local businesses grow and be able to make that a really important part of what we're doing with the CDA Giant, which is going to help us make money, which is going to help us make cartoons, right? I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't spend many years growing local businesses.
Right.
So, like, I always say that, like, life makes sense in reverse, right? The dots only connect going backwards. Right. And so, like, I had to go through all of that. But it's, I think, important to get to a place in your career at some point. And it might take you, like it took me. I'm in, like, the most excited place in my career ever. I'm not making the most money I've ever made, not actively, but I am the most excited, and I'm having the most fun, and I'm building the most, you know, important and biggest thing that I'll ever build, you know? It's not like when we had our exit from RV Share and, you know, had a wire show up and I was like, you know, whoa, business is real. That was, like, my first time ever going through that. Like, that was great. But this is the thing that's, like, really aligned with who I believe God wants me to become, the will that He has for me in my life. Like, I'm always just I'm just like, God, please just let me align with what you want for me so that I can experience your peace. That's it. Just bring me peace. And I will do whatever you want me to do so that I can be at peace.
That's good words.
And I think that this is the direction that He's led me. And there's plenty of reasons I can see now why. But again, I had to go through all that stuff to figure it out. And, like, now I'm finally in that place. And so, like, for people who are, like, listening, that's always something that I think about and I talk about with, like, clients that I consult with and what have you. It's like, too many people are building the wrong business for the wrong reasons, or they're running their business the wrong way for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And too many people are held back just because they have beliefs about their business. Like, I've done a lot of operations consulting, like growth consulting, from the perspective of helping people buy back time in the business so that they don't have to be a slave to the business that they're running. That was, like, one of my specialties in consulting for a long time. And, like, so many people get trapped entrepreneurs get trapped in a prison that they build themselves. And they never get to have fun. They never get to do what you're doing. Yeah. They never get to start the podcast. Like, what you're doing is amazing. The fact that, like, you made the space in your world, like, you built the business, your life in such a way that you could create enough freedom. Maybe not as much as you wanted or as much as you even needed, but you built enough freedom so that you can start doing this and then this and then this, and then one thing leads to another, to another, to another, and now here you are filming a podcast. Like, you gotta rep this. These guys, look at those new packaging, guys. The new roasts coming out that you guys have coming out, and, like, you know, you've got Maverick and all these amazing things that you're building, but you would never have been able to build those things if you didn't get yourself to a place where you were free enough to have the mental bandwidth to even explore the ideas.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think it's important that people do things that are fun, and I think that, as hard as it might be, it's worth rebuilding your entire life, because I've done it multiple times. I've walked away from a six-figure job to zero overnight because philosophically I didn't agree, and was like, all right, I have to build something brand new from nothing. And, like, but it freed me. And then when I built something and it was taking too much of my time, it's okay, I need to reduce everything down. Okay, that means I'm gonna have to take a pay cut. Well, so be it. We'll be alright. Take a pay cut, reduce things down, refactor, make it better so you can scale it back up without losing your sanity, right? Like, you have to take steps back. I mean, like, we moved from a 4-bedroom house with 2-car garage into an apartment. Why? So I sold it. I had a $40,000, $50,000 SUV, sold it, bought a 4Runner cash for $3,000. Why? So that I could quit my job and start Ancient Strength, right? And it's like, I suffered because of that. I had to take steps back. I had to humble myself. But they gave me the opportunity to do something that was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, that's so much more important. Because once your life is done, like, you will not have wished that you had more money. You will wish that you like rode your motorcycle more, or made love to your wife more often, or like visited the woods more.
Yeah,
you're not going to be thinking about, I should have spent 2 more hours a week in the office. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
You're going to care about much bigger and better things, and so start now. You know?
Come on. Good words, man. Hey, thanks a lot. And man, hey, thank you so much for watching or listening. And if you like the content, well, obviously you're going to like the content because it was good stuff. But if you know of somebody that, man, you think they would really like this, share this with them. If you know somebody who's thinking about starting a business or is in the struggles of business, share this with them, and let's just build a really cool community where we can learn from each other and give and take and all that kind of stuff. Hey, thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Sweet, dude. Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, dude, it was fun. I'm going to turn the light on so it's not so dark in here. It'll be less romantic.